3 years into a 10-year sentence, Tory Lanez is making his boldest claim yet. From behind bars, he's telling anyone who will listen that he didn't shoot Megan Thee Stallion. And now, with new evidence allegedly surfacing and a violent prison stabbing that nearly killed him, his case is back in the headlines. But here's what makes this different from every other celebrity claiming innocence. His legal team says they have documents that were never turned over at trial. Documents that could change everything. So what's really going on? Is Tory Lanez actually innocent? Or is this just another desperate attempt to escape a decade behind bars? Let's break down the latest developments in one of hip-hop's most controversial cases, the original conviction. Before we get into the appeal, we need to understand what Tory Lanez was actually convicted of. On July 12, 2020, after leaving a party at Kylie Jenner's Hollywood Hills home, an argument broke out in an SUV carrying Tory Lanez, Megan Thee Stallion, her assistant Kelsey Harris, and Lanez's security guard. According to testimony at trial, Megan asked to be let out of the vehicle. She testified that as she walked away, Tory Lanez fired a gun at her feet, hitting her multiple times. When police arrived on the scene, Megan initially told officers she had stepped on glass. She later admitted this wasn't true. It took until August 2020 for her to publicly identify Lanez as the shooter. That delay became a major point of contention throughout the case. In December 2022, after a trial that dominated social media and split public opinion down the middle, a Los Angeles jury found Tory Lanez guilty of 3 felony counts: assault with a semi-automatic firearm, carrying a loaded unregistered firearm in a vehicle, and discharging a firearm with gross negligence. In August 2023, he was sentenced to 10 years in state prison. Throughout the trial, Lanez maintained his innocence. He never took the stand, but his defense team argued that the evidence was circumstantial and that other people in that SUV could have fired the gun. The jury didn't buy it, but now, nearly 3 years later, Lanez and his legal team are saying the jury never heard the full story. The new evidence claims. Here's where things get interesting. In a recent interview with NBC News, Tory Lanez's attorney Crystal Morgan made a stunning allegation. She claims that medical records from Cedars-Sinai Hospital, where Megan was treated after the shooting, contain a document that was never turned over to the defense during the 2022 trial. The document in question is a pathology report dated July 14, 2020. According to Morgan, this report states that bullet fragments were removed from Megan's foot and placed in evidence bags. Those bags were then given to a security guard at Cedars-Sinai. But here's the problem. Morgan says those bags and fragments were never turned over to Lanez's defense team. In fact, she claims they don't know where those fragments are today. Why does this matter? Because the presence or absence of gunshot residue, the type of fragments, and forensic testing on those materials could have been critical evidence. If the defense never had access to these fragments, they couldn't test them. They couldn't challenge the prosecution's version of events with their own forensic analysis. Morgan discovered this document through an unusual route. It came to light during Megan Thee Stallion's civil defamation lawsuit against blogger Milagro Grams. The blogger's attorney was reviewing medical records for that case when they found the pathology report. When Morgan saw it, she immediately recognized it as something she'd never seen during Lanez's criminal trial. In his NBC interview, Lanez said the new evidence is overwhelming. He stated that he believes he was wrongfully convicted and that the amount of information emerging since trial proves his innocence. Those are strong words from someone serving a decade behind bars. But there's a catch. And it's a big one. The legal hurdles. Getting a conviction overturned based on new evidence isn't easy. In fact, it's incredibly difficult. According to legal analyst Misty Maris, Lanez's team faces what she calls a very high threshold. They need to prove 3 things. First, that this evidence was withheld during the trial. Second, that it was favorable to the defense. And third, that if the jury had seen this evidence, they would have reached a different verdict. That last part is the killer. It's not enough to show that evidence was missing. You have to convince an appellate court that this specific piece of evidence would have changed the minds of 12 jurors who already heard days of testimony, saw crime scene photos, and listened to Megan describe what happened to her. Maris called this an uphill battle. She said these types of appellate arguments often fail because the bar is set so high. Courts don't like to second-guess juries, especially when the trial record is extensive and the evidence was substantial. And here's another problem for Lanez. His direct appeal already failed. In August 2025, California's 2nd District Court of Appeal rejected his main appeal, finding no ineffective assistance of counsel or prejudicial trial court error. That means the judges looked at the claims his lawyers made about mistakes during trial and said, essentially, we don't see any problems here. Lanez also filed 2 habeas corpus petitions, which are separate legal challenges claiming his conviction should be thrown out based on issues not raised at trial. Both were denied. The court said his claims were presented in a piecemeal fashion and didn't meet the requirements for habeas relief. So when you hear headlines about Tory Lanez having new evidence, understand that the legal system has already told him no multiple times. This new evidence about the missing bullet fragments represents yet another attempt to challenge his conviction. But it's not a slam dunk. Not even close. The prison stabbing. And then, in May 2025, everything changed. Not legally, but in terms of public attention and the narrative around Lanez's imprisonment. On the morning of May 12, 2025, Tory Lanez was in the prison yard at California Correctional Institution in Tehachapi when another inmate attacked him. The assault was brutal. According to a statement posted to Lanez's Instagram account, he was stabbed 14 times. 7 wounds to his back, 4 to his torso, 2 to the back of his head, and 1 to the left side of his face. Both of his lungs collapsed. He was placed on a breathing apparatus and rushed to a hospital in Bakersfield. For a moment, it wasn't clear if he would survive. Surveillance footage from the prison later obtained by TMZ showed the attack. The video is disturbing. You see a man identified as Lanez get knocked to the ground by another inmate. The attacker jumps on top of him and brings his arm down repeatedly. Lanez kicks his legs trying to fend off the assault, then scrambles away and runs down a flight of stairs. Screenshots circulating online showed him covered in blood. The suspected attacker was identified as Santino Casio, a 42-year-old serving life with the possibility of parole for second-degree murder and first-degree attempted murder. Casio has a long history of violence in prison. In 2008, he was sentenced to an additional 6 years for assaulting an inmate with a deadly weapon. In 2018, he got 2 more years for possessing and manufacturing a weapon behind bars. This is not a man with a clean prison record. When TMZ spoke with Casio after the attack, he claimed he heard through the prison grapevine that Lanez was planning to attack him. Casio said he saw what looked like a weapon in Lanez's pocket, so he struck first. Whether that's true or just justification after the fact, we don't know. What we do know is that the attack was vicious and nearly fatal. Lanez survived. According to updates from his team, he's now breathing on his own, talking normally, and in good spirits considering what he went through. He was later transferred to another prison facility for his safety. The stabbing reignited public debate about his case. Some supporters argued that the violent attack proved Lanez shouldn't be in prison in the first place. Others pointed out that prison is a dangerous place for anyone, celebrity or not, and that this doesn't change the facts of his conviction. But there's no question the stabbing brought renewed attention to Lanez's ongoing legal battles. And that attention has drawn some unexpected allies. The political angle. Here's where this case takes a turn into politics. In May 2025, Florida Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna publicly called on California Governor Gavin Newsom to pardon Tory Lanez. In a tweet, she wrote that his 10-year sentence was based on flawed evidence, political pressure, and prosecutorial bias. She said justice must be blind, not driven by headlines. Let that sink in. A sitting member of Congress is advocating for the release of someone convicted by a jury of shooting another person. Luna isn't alone. Lanez's supporters have launched social media campaigns using the hashtag #FreeToryLanez. Some have accused the prosecution of railroading him because of public pressure to believe Megan Thee Stallion. And then there's the celebrity support. Drake, one of the biggest names in music, has reportedly shown support for Lanez. So has music manager Wack 100, who has been vocal about his belief that Lanez will be home soon. On a podcast with Adam 22, Wack claimed Lanez would be released by summer 2025. When Adam offered a $2,000 bet that wouldn't happen, Wack adjusted his timeline to within 2 years. Even with that extension, it's a bold prediction given that Lanez has lost every appeal so far. But here's the thing about public pressure and political intervention. They don't change the legal facts. Governor Newsom could theoretically pardon Lanez, but that would be an extraordinary move for a case where a jury heard the evidence, deliberated, and reached a verdict. Pardons are typically reserved for situations where there's overwhelming evidence of innocence or where the conviction was clearly unjust. Right now, despite the noise on social media, that's not where this case stands legally. Megan's perspective. It's important to remember that on the other side of this story is Megan Thee Stallion, who testified under oath that Tory Lanez shot her. She described the emotional and physical trauma of that night in detail. She talked about the harassment she faced online in the years following the shooting. She spoke about feeling like she was on trial, not just as a witness, but as a victim whose credibility was constantly questioned. In December 2024, Megan was granted a restraining order against Lanez that extends until 2030. Her legal team filed a petition alleging that even from prison, Lanez has continued to harass her through surrogates. They claim he's been using bloggers and social media to spread false information about the case, including claims that the gun and bullet evidence are missing. According to the petition, Lanez shows no signs of stopping and continues to subject Megan to repeated trauma and victimization. Megan's attorney, Alex Spiro, dismissed the new evidence claims in a statement. He said Tory Lanez was tried and convicted by a jury of his peers, and his case was properly adjudicated through the court system. He emphasized that this is not a political matter. It's a case of violent assault that was resolved in the court of law. In her documentary, Megan spoke about the impact the shooting and trial had on her mental health. She said there were days she didn't want to be on this earth. She talked about wishing he had just killed her, if she knew she'd have to go through the torture of defending her truth in public. This is not a victimless situation. Whatever you believe about Tory Lanez's guilt or innocence, Megan Thee Stallion was shot. She had bullet fragments in her feet, she underwent surgery, and she's had to live with the aftermath of that night for over 4 years now. The appeals process. So where does the legal case actually stand right now? As of December 2025, Tory Lanez's direct appeal has been denied. His habeas corpus petitions have been denied, but his legal team isn't done. Crystal Morgan has indicated they have other avenues they're pursuing. She's called them safety nets in case the current appeals don't work. One of those avenues is the new evidence about the missing bullet fragments. Morgan has said they plan to file additional appeals based on this discovery. There's also the issue of the DNA testing. In one of his denied petitions, Lanez argued that the firearm recovered in the case had been misplaced and is currently missing. He also claimed the DNA testing presented at trial violated industry-accepted standards. The appellate court said he failed to provide any reasonably available documentary evidence to support that claim, so they rejected it. But Morgan isn't backing down. In interviews, she's maintained that the district attorney hoodwinked them and that the trial results were manipulated to get a conviction. Those are serious allegations, and if she can back them up with actual evidence, it could be significant. The problem is, so far, the courts haven't found her arguments persuasive. Legal experts watching the case say the pathway to freedom for Lanez is extremely narrow. Even if the missing bullet fragments are a legitimate issue, proving that they would have changed the jury's verdict is a massive challenge. The prosecution's case didn't rest solely on forensic evidence. They had Megan's testimony. They had testimony from other witnesses. They had the fact that Lanez sent Megan text messages after the incident that could be interpreted as apologetic. All of that would still be there, even if new forensic evidence came to light. The public divide. What makes this case so fascinating and so frustrating for people trying to follow it is the massive divide in public opinion. On social media, you'll find thousands of people who believe Tory Lanez is innocent. They point to inconsistencies in witness statements. They question why Megan initially told police she stepped on glass. They argue that Kelsey Harris, Megan's former best friend, who was also in the car that night, could have been the shooter. And there's some basis for that theory. During the trial, Harris gave testimony that was at times contradictory. There were allegations that she might have been involved in the shooting. Some witnesses claimed they saw a woman with a gun, but the jury heard all of this and still convicted Lanez. On the other side, you have people who believe Megan unequivocally. They point out that she had no reason to lie about being shot. They note that she was the one who ended up injured. They argue that the jury heard all the evidence and made their decision, and we should respect that. This divide has played out in ugly ways. Megan has been subjected to intense online harassment. Conspiracy theories about the case have spread like wildfire. Some people have accused her of lying for attention or to boost her career, even though being shot is hardly a career move anyone would choose. Meanwhile, Lanez's supporters have rallied around him, claiming he's a victim of a rush to judgment and Me Too era politics. They say his case is an example of how men can be convicted without solid evidence, based purely on accusations. The truth is probably more complicated than either narrative. This was a case with messy facts, complicated relationships, and a lot of he said, she said elements. But at the end of the day, a jury looked at everything and found Lanez guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. The bigger questions. This case raises some uncomfortable questions about celebrity justice, public opinion, and how we process cases of violence against women, particularly black women. Megan Thee Stallion is a successful rapper who was shot. Instead of universal sympathy, she faced skepticism, victim blaming, and harassment. Some of that came from people who genuinely questioned the evidence, but a lot of it came from people who seemed determined not to believe her no matter what. There's also the question of how social media has changed the way these cases play out. In the past, a celebrity trial would be covered by traditional media, but the general public wouldn't have the ability to dissect every piece of evidence and testimony in real time. Now everyone's an armchair detective. Everyone has a theory. And those theories get amplified by algorithms that reward engagement over accuracy. The Tory Lanez case has become a litmus test. What you believe about it says something about how you view allegations of violence, how much you trust the criminal justice system, and how you process information in an age of information overload. For some people, the fact that Lanez maintains his innocence is enough to create reasonable doubt. For others, the jury's verdict is the final word. Both perspectives make sense from different angles, and that's part of what makes this case so polarizing. What happens next? As of now, Tory Lanez is still in prison. He's recovering from the stabbing and has been transferred to a new facility. His legal team continues to work on appeals, though they face an uphill battle given the previous denials. The new evidence about the missing bullet fragments will likely be the centerpiece of their next legal move. If they can demonstrate that this evidence was improperly withheld and that it would have made a difference at trial, they might have a shot at getting a new hearing. But that's a big if. Meanwhile, Megan Thee Stallion is moving forward with her life and career. She's made it clear she wants to put this chapter behind her, but the restraining order and ongoing legal battles mean she can't fully escape it. The case has also become a broader conversation about how we treat victims of violence, particularly women of color, in the public eye. Megan's experience has been held up as an example of the unique challenges faced by black women who come forward about abuse or assault. They're often not believed. They're scrutinized more harshly. Their pain is minimized or dismissed. On the flip side, Lanez's supporters point to him as an example of someone whose life has been destroyed by allegations, and they want people to consider the possibility that the system got it wrong. They're not entirely out of line for asking those questions. Wrongful convictions do happen. The criminal justice system is not infallible. But questioning a conviction and overturning it are two very different things. And right now, the legal system has repeatedly upheld Lanez's conviction. Final thoughts. So here's where we land. Tory Lanez says he didn't shoot Megan Thee Stallion. He says new evidence proves his innocence. He's suffered a near-fatal stabbing in prison. He has political allies calling for his release. And he has a passionate fan base convinced he's been wronged. But he's also been convicted by a jury. His appeals have been denied. and the courts have found no legal errors that would warrant overturning that conviction. Does that mean he's guilty? Legally, yes, the system has spoken. But does it mean he's factually guilty? That's a question each person has to answer for themselves based on what they believe about the evidence, the testimony, and the process. What we can say for certain is this: Tory Lanez will continue fighting. His legal team won't stop filing appeals as long as they see any opening. His supporters won't stop advocating for his release. And Megan Thee Stallion will continue dealing with the aftermath of a night in 2020 that changed both of their lives forever. Whether Lanez is innocent or guilty, whether the system worked or failed, this case will be debated for years to come. And maybe that's the most uncomfortable truth of all. In an age where everyone has an opinion and a platform to share it, some questions don't have clean answers. Some cases don't end with everyone satisfied, and some stories don't have clear heroes and villains. This is one of those stories. What do you think about the new evidence claims? Do you believe Tory Lanez deserves another trial, or do you think the jury got it right the first time? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to stay updated on this case as it continues to develop, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This story isn't over yet. 3 years into a 10-year sentence, Tory Lanez is making his boldest claim yet. From behind bars, he's telling anyone who will listen that he didn't shoot Megan Thee Stallion. And now, with new evidence allegedly surfacing and a violent prison stabbing that nearly killed him, his case is back in the headlines. But here's what makes this different from every other celebrity claiming innocence. His legal team says they have documents that were never turned over at trial. Documents that could change everything. So, what's really going on? Is Tory Lanez actually innocent, or is this just another desperate attempt to escape a decade behind bars? Let's break down the latest developments in one of hip-hop's most controversial cases.